Larry, I think they're all asleep. Well, welcome to you, and good morning. Welcome to those of you gathered here, and to those of you joining us online. My name is James Moser. It's my privilege to be your worship associate this morning. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware, is an inclusive community. Whether your faith journey is currently in a barren wilderness or in a peace garden, you're welcome here. Whether you are single or paired or alone again, you are welcome here. No matter whom you love, you are welcome here. Whether you were born here or came here, whether you're struggling or prospering, whether your skin is dark or light or in between, you're welcome here. Whether you came from a broken home or a happy one, you are welcome here. Whether you are younger or older, or like most of us in between, you're welcome here. If you're new to First Unitarian, either here in person or online, we invite you to learn more about our church at the website, which is firstuuwilm.org. And you may go there to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter. As today is the first Sunday of March, we introduced our new monthly Spirit Matters theme, which is the gift of transformation. And so that theme will be guiding us for the next several weeks. Later this morning, we will feature an update and appeal for the annual stewardship drive. It's time that we thrive is our gathering theme this year. There's information on a table in the parish hall and a person there who can tell you more. And today is UUSC Justice Sunday, and a little bit later, Doyle Dobbins will speak to us during the stewardship time. Again, welcome to this morning's service. Our specific theme during worship today is slowing down. So now, let us prepare our minds and hearts to enter that space-time of special consciousness that we call the sacred, leaving the trivial at the doorstep and opening ourselves to the deep needs and hopes at our center. Let us prepare to worship.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Larry Piers. I have the joy of being the minister here at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. Every now and then, someone asks me, Larry, where do you get all of your energy? I can't tell you all of the secrets, but I'm going to tell you one. So this is just among us. Let's lean in a little bit. So oftentimes when I'm driving to church on a Sunday morning, I just pick some music on my phone to listen to. And, the Lord works in mysterious ways, her wonders to perform. It just so happens that this morning, the song that appeared and it blared through the speakers of my car, was Whitney Houston. I want to dance with somebody. Who knows that song? Okay, just hum it to yourself for a moment. So that's the earworm that I have as I'm joining with you today. And I do get energized when I have dance partners, and I'm so glad that you are here today to join in the dance. So our opening words, our call to worship, I should say, is this. A contemplative is one who takes the time to observe herself and the world around her closely and sensitively, with openness and without an agenda. He observes his own thoughts and feelings and patterns of behavior. She actually actively observes herself and others, the plants, the animals, the wind, the rain, the streams, and the rivers. Contemplation honors the world with open, undivided attention. So as we join in worship this morning, let us seek to hone our own contemplative practice and approach this time together with an openness and an undivided attention.
If you have a chalice at home, we invite you to join us here in the sanctuary in lighting the candle during these words. The light we ignite is not created by us, it is received by us. The light has come to us from the hands of our predecessors, from the lives of faith pilgrims before us who have braved and saved the stories that illuminate our journey. This particular light now shines in our midst for a time. May we behold it and receive it and internalize it. And now please stand as you are able, and we will sing together Find a Stillness, number 362. Please remain standing after for our unison affirmation.
Stillness, carry
Please join me in our unison affirmation. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action. Linger a Little Longer by Dean Fraser, who lives in the northern county of England called Lancashire. Linger a little longer in our home before once again you must roam. Tell us of your travelers' tales, spare none of us the details. Stay with us, more precious stories of strangest lands and territories. Those desert sunsets you bore witness, your need to go when you feel listless. Yet talk some more and lay down here of more adventures we long to hear. The Silk Route taken and the olive trail of every mountain you've had to scale. Be with us for a little more time. Share our food, drink our wine. Regale us with happy song and dance, full of mystery and a little romance. Rest a while, our dearest friend. We know your journeys you must attend, but linger a little longer with us right here, for all too soon you will disappear.
Thank you, James. We live in a time of crisis. It's not a newsflash. Since October 7th, we have seen atrocity piled upon atrocity in the Israeli and Palestinian war. We recently marked the 2-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, which is really an escalation of the Russo-Ukrainian war that actually started in 2014. But beyond Gaza and Ukraine, violent conflicts, climate emergencies, and food shortages in other places around the globe, in Africa, Haiti, Venezuela, to name a few, have led to famine and forced displacements in what has been called an immigration crisis. Many of these crises are too easily forgotten by the news media, neglected by aid donors, often just because their complexity or their relative lack of geopolitical importance. More and more, we witness gun violence in our own country, hoping every time that we hear about one, that the number of victims might not be that large, whatever that means. We are living on an earth in peril because of our own actions. We've observed more drama than decision in Congress, more dysfunction than democracy. And I believe, I've heard, that there's a presidential election going on in the United States, which seems to create more polarizing than politics, more face palms and fanaticism. One way or another, we are living in a time of crisis. What I've noticed, and have you noticed this, is that during this time we can have a cringe response before looking at the morning's news or turning on the radio or scrolling through our phones. there may be this subtle hesitation, this inner murmur that if we were to tune in to it, begins with a kind of voice within us, a sub-vocalization. I wonder what craziness is happening now. I wonder what catastrophe could be occurring now. Am I alone in this? For me, it might begin with these sub-vocalizations and then proceed to a kind of a tightening in my shoulders, a gritting of my teeth, and even if I'm paying attention, a momentary holding of my breath. What I'm calling that cringe response. It's a way of freezing in response to the crises that we are in. Often in having conversations with friends, even like last Friday night, friends who were over for dinner, oftentimes there's this question, can you believe this? How could this be happening? And this could represent any number of current crises that are occurring. Yet, my friends, we have a choice in how to respond to this crisis moment that we are in. We have a choice in how to respond to this crisis moment that we are in. Fight, flight, freeze, are only among some of the choices available to us. And our cringe response is a very real response. And the fact that we can name any of these responses, keenly observe ourselves, means that we can lovingly observe our response to what is. For we are more than the physical, the emotional, and the mental dynamics of our cringing in the face of the crises that we are in. Our innate human capacity to observe ourselves, to find a sacred center within from which we can stand alongside and stand within all that is occurring, rather than simply become our cringe response, become our fight, our flight, our freeze responses, may serve us in ways that we don't often readily recognize. Our innate human capacity to cultivate that sacred center, that loving observer within ourselves, is available to us all in the midst of life's storms and even in the throes of crises. Cultivating that inner knowing, that inner attentiveness is so essential to our humanness. It allows us to observe whatever content could absorb, occupy our attention, our consciousness, and surprisingly, it is this pause, this capacity to pause, to observe, to notice, that can often give us more capacity to act consciously and conscientiously and effectively for justice. The ancients called this capacity contemplation. Now, suspend what you think you know about contemplation for just a minute. Let go of some assumptions you might have about monks and monasteries or solitude or escapism or whatever you might call, or what you might even call woo-woo spirituality. When we dispense of some of these costumes that we could put onto contemplation, we may come to recognize, as many neuroscientists today do, that this capacity to pause, to linger, to contemplate may serve us even and especially in these times of crises. Now, if it helps, I offer this definition of contemplation by the contemporary spiritual teacher Cynthia Bourgeault. She writes, "Contemplation understood in the light of a holographic universe is not a special gift. It is simply seeing from the perspective of oneness, or in other words, from the level of spiritual awareness. It can indeed be practiced, and over time, with sincerity and persistence, it becomes an abiding state of consciousness. At times, this unitive seeing may sweep you into rapt adoration, and at other times, it simply deposits you powerfully and nakedly into the present moment." Now, that might sound just a little too esoteric for your taste. So I might translate these words about contemplative practice and the contemplative life into the simple practices of slowing down and lingering with what is. Practices that are so sorely needed in these days. So needed, even when we don't realize how much our hurrying about, our ruminating, our worrying does not actually activate us into deliberate, decisive, and determinative action that can actually make a difference in our lives and in this world. It could be that within crises, there is a message. It could be that crises are nature's way of forcing change, breaking down old structures, shaking loose negative habits so that something new and better can take place. It was Barbara Holmes' short book, Crisis Contemplation, Healing the Wounded Village, that broadened my own understanding of contemplation as a communal practice, as well as a personal one. She expanded my understanding that there is such a thing as crisis contemplation that arises from calamity rather than comfort. Holmes offers that when crisis impacts us as a community, we collectively plunge into a space of stillness and unknowing, a shared interiority of potential and spiritual rebirthing. Now, my response to Holmes is that it's not necessarily so. I mean, I do understand the plunge part of her statement, but I would have to say that is how we respond and our capacity to tune in to that shared interiority or spiritual rebirthing that makes it even possible. Our capacity to even tune in makes it possible. But most often, we don't tune in to that. Think of the ways that we typically respond, how we typically move through our days, and we can often observe that we are not available to that shared interiority from which a shift in our capacity to respond can collectively occur. Perhaps you saw the article in the New York Times, "Hurry Up and Wait," by Melissa Kirsch this week. She shares this experience, which I am sure many of us can identify with. She writes, "Racing to catch a subway train recently, I tripped on the stairs leading to the platform, steadying myself only barely by grabbing the arm of an unexpected and rightfully alarmed fellow passenger. I sustained no major damage. A scraped knee, a bruise on my thigh, I discovered a week later. These injuries were, I told myself in the aftermath, well-deserved. I'd disregarded one of my precepts for personal happiness, the one that stipulates most misery is caused by rushing." She continues, since my subway incident, I've been trying to notice when I'm rushing, physically and psychologically. Where are you going, I ask myself? And why are you in such a hurry? That pause helps put a little space between here and there, and might, with any luck, avert future misery. But what I really liked about her article is her naming psychological hurrying as well. She writes, we rush because we're late. We also rush because we want to move quickly away from discomfort. We rush to come up with solutions to problems that would benefit from more sustained consideration. We rush into obligations or decisions or relationships because we want things settled. Worrying is a kind of rushing. It's uncomfortable to sit in a state of uncertainty. So we fast forward the tape, accelerating our lives past the present moment into some fearsome, imagined scenarios. This pattern of physical and psychological rushing is one that I think actually impedes our capacity for the kind of personal and collective contemplation that could actually generate more creative and thoughtful responses to the crises that we are in, either personally or collectively. And in the days ahead, my friends, in the days ahead, we are needing to cultivate this capacity for contemplative, slowing down, lingering, being with, rather than trying to move too quickly ahead of what is. Do you hear what I'm saying? And we can help each other with that. Of course, when we're in the midst of crises, contemplation, that seems very counterintuitive. Bayo Akomolafe states that contemplation seems like the wrong thing to do when there's fire on the mountain, but in hurrying up all the time, we often lose sight of the abundance of resources that might actually help us meet today's most challenging crises. The call to slow down works to bring us face to face with the invisible, the hidden, the unremarked, and the yet to be resolved. Barbara Holmes also underlines this in her exploration of what she calls crisis contemplation when she says, to slow down and be still is to allow both the source of our troubles and the options for recovery to emerge. Both to emerge. It may be hard to imagine, as Holmes postulates, that contemplation is an act of abiding with and enabling the possibility of justice. It was hard for me to really understand her point until I had a recent experience that I think illustrated it for me. Last Sunday afternoon, I attended a peace walk focusing on the crisis in Israel and Palestine. It was sponsored by the American Friends of Combatants for Peace, and I've spoken about this group before. Combatants for Peace is a grassroots movement of Israelis and Palestinians working together to end the occupation and bring peace, equality, and freedom to their homeland. It was founded by former fighters on both sides, quote unquote, of the conflict in 2006. I've attended a number of their events during this crisis period since October. The peace walk included over 250 people of different ages, backgrounds, ethnicities, and religions, Muslims and Jews, Christians, Quakers, and many others. We began the march with a few opening words and some nigun. Those are Hebrew wordless prayers that have chant-like tones. We were asked not to carry any signs that we might have brought. Instead, there were signs with the faces of children, Israeli and Palestinian children who had died during the many weeks of this current conflict in Gaza and Israel. The peace walk was silent, no chanting. We were encouraged to imagine every step was like a prayer. We walked up one side of a busy section of a Philadelphia street, Germantown Avenue, that had been closed down for our walk. And first, as we walked up the hill, and I could sense the solemnness of this act, every step being like a prayer, it was like a contemplative time, a time of feeling the unity of our common concern with those who had joined together for this walk, maybe 4 across or 5 across as we walked up one side of the avenue. And also a kind of a common concern, obviously, for the situation that we were witnessing to. We were not talking or advocating or for one side of the conflict or another, just for the one side of peace. It was when those in front of the line took a U-turn and proceeded on the same street, on the opposite lane, so I could see the procession of faces who had previously been in front of me. It was at that moment that I could see the posters of the faces of the Israeli and the Palestinian children and their names, those who had died during these recent weeks of conflict. I couldn't help but be moved to tears. Since through the steps of that silent march, I was in a state of actually abiding with others. Those gathered with me whose steps signaled our commitment to a peace that was beyond our current understanding, that I was then also to abide then with these children who had been unwilling, innocent, tragic victims of senseless terrorism and relentless retaliation. To linger in those feelings was not a comfortable one. To abide with those actual faces and names was not a comfortable one. But it was indeed, for me, a crisis contemplation. Contemplation taking place in the midst of a crisis. It was in my tears for the children that I connected most with why there must be a path to peace, why there must be a stopping, at the very least, a humanitarian pause to this conflict. Justice is needed for no other sake in my mind and heart than for these Israeli and Palestinian children. It's quite a different experience to just see numbers than it is to see faces of real children killed, whose lives were cut off so tragically by a senseless, mean conflict. So for some of us, contemplation may take many forms. It might be really a forum in which we gather with others to walk for the sake of peace and to declare the need for justice. For others of us, it may be gathering with others just to hold in silence whatever is occurring in our own lives or in the world that we share. For some, it might be gardening. Who finds contemplation in gardening? Let me just see a few hands. Yeah. For some of us, it might be a walk in nature. And for some of us, it might just be a silent pause at the dawning of a new day or at the end of a day, where we just abide with the precious moments of life that we have had that day. A colleague reminded me this week of this quote from Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweet Grass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. It spoke to me of that even in the midst of so much conflict, there still are sources of renewal and regeneration within us, among us, and around us in the very earth itself. The quote is, "Grieving is a sign of spiritual health, but it is not enough to weep for our lost landscapes. We have to put our hands in the earth to make ourselves whole again. Even a wounded world is feeding us. Even a wounded world holds us and gives us moments of wonder and joy. I choose joy over despair," she writes, "not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and I must return that gift." So, my friends, in the midst of all that is happening in the world, in our own individual worlds and the greater world that we share, may we still find sources of joy that renew us and strengthen our resolve to bring more life, more peace, and more compassion by our own presence in this world. So the practice of contemplation, even in the midst of crisis, may allow us to slow down and to linger, to abide with one another in a situation so that we may find a shared interiority of potential and spiritual rebirthing. Akomolafe teaches, slowing down is about lingering in the places we are not used to, seeking new questions, becoming accountable to more than what rests on the surface. So as we move forward through the weeks and the months ahead, I want to encourage us to slow down. I'll try to model that. I want to encourage us to linger, to not hurry ahead, to not merely cringe at the challenges in the world that we share, but to find ways to hold space within ourselves and to hold space for one another as we dare to be with what is happening in our own lives and in the community, in the country, and in the world around us. And in so doing, may we find a new grounding to accompany our work for justice, to strengthen our work of compassion and care, and for deepening our personal and collective spiritual lives. So may it be. So this morning we're going to engage in a practice together of abiding with one another. We're going to have 3 pauses. The first will be I'll light a candle and we will name our cares or concerns for ourselves personally. We'll take a little silence to hold those with each other, and then we'll sing a verse of a song that we'll introduce shortly. Second candle will be our concerns for others in our lives, those that we know of in this congregation or in our own lives who we have some care or concern for. And the third candle, and then we'll also take some silence and sing a verse of the song. And then the third, we'll light a candle for our world, our larger world that we share. We'll name our concerns and our cares for that larger world, take some silence to hold it, and then have the song that we'll be introducing. So the song is something that many of you may know. Join in as you feel ready. Let's just hear the song first, so that when we get to the place where we'll be singing it, we may actually have learned it. Holding me, there is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding me. I rest in this love. So as I light this first candle, let's name in this space aloud, if you are willing, whatever concerns you are holding for yourself. And those who are joining us online, you may write those in the chat. So speak aloud if you will. What a care or concern that you might have for yourself personally. If you do speak a little louder, we're able to hold it with you. Just a note, so it's up to you. Okay, let's pause in silence, knowing that there are people in our community, both in this room and online, who are holding a concern or care for themselves. Let's hold it in silence for a moment. Let's abide with them. And let's sing me. There's using the word me in the place needed. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding us. I rest in this love. As I light this second candle, let's bring to heart and mind those in our lives, in our congregation, those that we know who are going through a concern or that you have a care for them. So let's take a moment, think of that, and then speak aloud into this room or write into the chat those names. Kevin and Susan.
Luann and Leslie. Sarah Barlow.
So let's pause in a moment to abide with those who we care about, hold them, in our collective and individual hearts. And we'll sing now the verse with the word you. There is a love holding you. There is a love holding you. There is a love holding all that you love. There is a love holding all you rest in this love. And so I've lit this third candle to represent the cares that we have for our wider world, our global world, what's happening in our country and our world at large. So let's take a moment to reflect on what that might be, what you're holding, what we're holding in our own hearts. And when you're ready, speak those aloud in this room or write them in the chat.
The Russians who attended the death of the opposition leader.
Navalny, democracy.
So let's sing us. There's a love holding us. Is that right? Yeah. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all we rest in this love.
As you know, First Unitarian Church is in the midst of an annual stewardship drive. I want you to reflect for a moment Are you grateful to be here? That gratitude is where the source of your commitment to this church lies. Be in touch with that gratitude. If you've not yet filled out a pledge card, or if you even wish to revise one that you've turned in previously, you may do so in the parish hall at a table that will be awaiting you. The support for this congregation pours from our gratitude, and so let it be rich. This day is also UUSC Justice Sunday, and as promised, Doyle Dobbins is here to offer some greeting for us on that note. Come, Doyle.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Try that. See how that works.
Can you hear me better? Okay. Well, I'll try to be contemplative as I talk about UUSC. Now, most of you know what UUSC stands for, but some of you may not. The Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, our service committee that reaches out in our behalf throughout the world to fight injustice and to work on human rights, civil rights, and justice. And you'll see on the screen a certificate. Can you read this certificate? Well, that's a reminder that we are in a long-term contemplative partnership with UUSC. We've been in a partnership with UUSC as a congregation for decades. And it's important to renew our partnership at least once a year, or more often if we can. Now, how do we renew that partnership? Well, primarily financially, with donations, gifts, however we want to support the service committee. This certificate was given to us last fall. Do you remember when Laura Randall was here and gave us the certificate? Well, it's a reminder for us of our partnership with UUSC, not to work just locally, but to work around the world. And you know that we are in a partnership with UUSC right now through our campus program, campus, which is a UUSC program that we have joined. We've been in it for a year or more, and it has to do with our asylum project. Now, that's very important, and we'll be talking and learning more about that in coming weeks. And I see Becky shaking her head, and she will help us with that. Today, I'd like to urge you to focus on the worldwide work of UUSC. And I'd like for you to think contemplatively about how you can support that worldwide work. How can you do that? Well, one of the best ways to do it is to intentionally and timely contribute to support the work of UUSC around the world. Now, if you want to go online to uusc.org, you can read about their work, how extensive it is, all the places where they are working on our behalf. So it's important that we participate in that as partners with UUSC as often as we can. How can we do that? Well, today we're having a Share the Plate event. Now, we are contemplative about the Share the Plate events because we have a chance once every month to share the plate. And that's good. That's very good. And today we want to focus on UUSC and how we share the plate with that organization working in our behalf around the world. So, give today if you can. Renew your partnership with UUSC. Or give next week, or next month, or next quarter, or sometime this year. And you know, there are all kinds of ways. You can always write a check, and if you write a check to UUSC and leave it with the church will forward it to UUSC. You can give online by going to uusc.org and just follow the guidelines. Or you can do something a little bit unusual if you're old enough to give to the UUSC through your RMD, or I should say through your IRA, because you have to make a required minimum distribution every year, and you can use the qualified charitable distribution, which is good not only to support UUSC, but it lowers your taxable income. So that's a good deal. So think about that as another way to support and contribute. I think it's really important, whether we're talking about the church or UUSC or other organizations, that we, to the degree that we can, we be intentional in our giving and timely. Both are very important. If we want to make a difference in the world, all the places that Larry mentioned, plus many more, where we need to fight injustice. And one of the best ways we have to fight injustice around the world is through UUSC. So I'll turn it back over to Larry, no, not Larry, to James for the offertory dedication. But keep in mind, think about this, not just today, but later, and be sure and make a contribution to UUSC. Thank you.
Thank you, Doyle. As the choir sings, there will be projected on our screen the various options you have for making contributions to First Unitarian Church and, as you wish to do, to earmark gifts for UUSC. Would you join me now in our offering dedication? To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings.
Spirit of God.
As we prepare to extinguish the candle here in the sanctuary, if you have a chalice at home, I invite you to extinguish your flame as we hear these words. The light of faith has come to us from our predecessors to illuminate our journey. This particular light has been shining in our midst for a time. We have received it, and we extinguish it for now. But we have internalized the light, and so we carry it forth into a darkened world. Let your light shine.
Nice. Thank you. So, before we have our closing hymn and our benediction, just a few things to note. Today at 12 o'clock in the Warner Room, those of you who would like to gather with me for just a half an hour for a soul conversation, it introduces our theme for the Soul Matters group this month, which is transformation. I really particularly like it if you're a newcomer. It gives me a chance to meet you and for you to meet some of our members as we have a little focused conversation for half an hour. Contemplation happens in so many ways. Maybe you noticed that Mondays in the park begin this Monday, March 4th. There's meditation class on Wednesday night. And if you liked that song that we sang during our contemplative prayer, on the second Wednesday of every month, we have a Vespers service that Cindy and Kathy do. And it's a similar kind of experience of holding each other in prayer and some light music and singing as well. So the closing words are from a favorite of mine, Howard Thurman. In the stillness of quiet, if we listen, we can hear the whisper of the heart, giving strength to weakness, courage to fear, hope to despair. Join now in singing Amazing Grace. The words will appear on the screen, number 205 in the hymnal.
I
you.